Okay, so you've already seen the thumbnail at this point. You probably read the title, you know why you're here. So no waiting around, let's take a look at this in action. If I bring up F3, right over there, you can see the X coordinate. It's negative 7,519, right? Now, if I needed to teleport in an instant, that's not a problem. I push a button, and now you can see that X coordinate in the corner, negative 531. I just traveled 7,000 blocks in an instant. Now that was done using a core vanilla Minecraft mechanic called a stasis chamber. And I have a little setup right here to show you exactly how that works. So this is a bubble column, and it's deep enough that if I throw an ender pearl down in there, it doesn't touch anything, but the bubble column sends it back up. Now, when it's floating like this, it's not actually an item. I can't go over to it and pick it up. It's waiting to teleport me. And if we were to somehow interact with it, like so, you can see it will teleport me to the location. Well, that's great and all, but it's got a lot of limitations. But using the Create mod, we can take it to superior levels of teleportation. So if we were to use the Create mod to make a stasis chamber, the way we would do it is get an encased fan and make it blow upwards so that it is suspending an ender pearl just like that. Now this is a really simple setup. All I have right here is an encased fan, a gearbox, and a creative motor. Now, the whole thing is the fan. You need a fan pointing up. However you want to power it, that's up to you. Now, there are some important things to consider when you're going to make a stasis chamber like this. First of all, how do you want to load the stasis chamber? Now, to suspend an ender pearl like this, we can either throw it from below or from above. Now, throwing it from below is problematic. Much like when you shoot a bow and arrow, there's a bit of randomness to where it goes. So there's no good way to make it land back in the airstream. You just got to get lucky that it does. If I were just to place myself right up against the edge of the stream like that, look directly up, and then move it just a pixel or two down, I find that this way tends to work a lot. And it looks like I got it with this one. A lot of times though, it will miss, so you will be using more pearls this way. The other way you can do it is by throwing your pearl downward into the air. And as you'll see, it's a lot more consistent than throwing it upwards. Most likely when you throw it downward into the stream, you're not going to have any problems. Now that you decided which method you want to use to throw the pearl, it's really important to dial in your RPMs so that the machine works just right. Now, if you throw the pearl from below, you can have an RPM as low as 80. That's the lowest RPM you can go and still have the wind catch the pearl and suspend it. And if we look there, we can see there are 6 blocks in between the fan and where the pearls come to rest. That's an important note because really there are many ways you can build your teleporter. And one of them would be activating it from up top where the pearls are located. Now over here, when we throw the pearls downward into the stream, we need to have more RPMs, a minimum of 96, but I suggest going a little higher than that because when you throw the pearl down into the airstream, sometimes it happens to hit the fan. But as you can see here, the minimum distance between the pearls and the fan is 8 blocks. And if we take a look here, you can see this is a very simple method of activation. There's a clutch here and a lever. If we flip this lever, the fan goes off, the pearls drop, and will warp there instantly. This is something that a friend can set off. Now, if 80 is the lowest RPM we can go, there is a bit of a limit to how high you probably want to go. Now, right here, at an RPM of 128, you'll start getting bouncing from the ender pearl. And that could cause problems if you're trying to activate the pearl from up here rather than down below. And you'll see if you increase the RPMs even more, you're going to get even crazier bouncing happening. Now here we're looking at a little bit more of an advanced system that will really improve how the teleporter functions. As you can see, we have a redstone link here and it's in receiving mode. Under it is a clutch, so when this redstone link receives power, it will turn off the clutch and the fan will stop blowing. And we're going to use this great little item from the Create mod called the Linked Controller. It's a little remote control that you can keep on you and push buttons whenever you want. And if I were to right click on that redstone link, you can see it highlights it and I'm able to bind its function to one of those buttons. And there's 6 buttons you can use. And then while holding the link, if you shift right click, you can open up a little bit of a UI and see what's linked to it. And this represents 3 separate frequencies that I've linked this controller to. So I can teleport to 3 different locations with this controller. So let's go ahead and bring it up. This is the orange frequency, which is pressing to the left. Let's do that and bam, instantly teleported. Now this is an example of a method of how you would load it from the top. crouch out over the fan, throw the pearl, it'll come back up. In just a moment, it'll come to a resting position. Once it's high enough, I can go ahead and clip that trapdoor. The fan will keep the pearl suspended just above it, and now when I teleport here, it'll put me right on that trapdoor. Here we have another example of a method you can use to set off your teleporter. You can also use pulse repeaters and pulse extenders to make a nice little timer to call you back whenever you want. Whatever time I decide to put on this repeater will be how long it takes before the teleporter ports me back. And as an example, I'm using this extender to extend the pulse by 2 seconds when it comes in. That will give enough time for the fan to shut off and allow the pearl to drop all the way before kicking back on again. Now, one of these pulse repeaters can have a max timer of 30 minutes, or you can go longer if you want to add more of these repeaters. Now, if you have a friend that needs to call you back, they can just flip that trapdoor, it will block the air, and it'll bring you right back. And let's go ahead and push this button to show you the timer in action. Right there, the 5-second timer is waiting, counting down, and there it goes. It's getting powered, and I was teleported. And the system turned right back on again. Another way you could set off your teleporter is by using a daylight sensor. And with that, you'll know that you'll be brought back at the day or the night or whatever. This could be really cool for spending your nights caving and then getting called back at the break of dawn to do whatever you need in the overworld. Now back to the link controller. If we were to set just a redstone link on top of this clutch, and we push the button to call it back, it's not going to happen. That's because it's only sending out a slight pulse, and the pearl needs time to drop to the ground. So with this method, if you hold down the button, it'll drop, but you got to hold it down for a couple seconds. So if you don't mind holding down the button, that's a nice simple way to do it. But you can also set up this system right here. Have the pulse going into an extender, which extends for 2 seconds, and then when I push the button, you can see it powers the clutch for 2 seconds, which is long enough for your pearl to hit the ground and teleport you back. So there's a couple different methods of activating your pearl. All of these systems are great, and you can see there's a lot of variation to how you can pull off your teleporter. But fans can be a little problematic, and you might waste some ender pearls. So if you don't want to use the fan, you can just use a regular stasis chamber, and you'll find pretty much all of your ender pearls will land just where you need them. You can see here just 6 blocks worth of bubble vader is all that's required to create a stasis. And this super simple setup is all you need to set it off. We've got a redstone link here so that our controller can call us back from a distance, or if someone needs to call us back, we have our trapdoor right there. So this is arguably the best design, but a fan is still really cool. Now let's talk about the limitations of the teleporter and how you can surpass them. It all comes down to this linked controller here. That's how I was able to teleport 7,000 blocks away, and you could really go as far as you want. But there are some tricks to being able to do it. First of all, the link controller by default can only work up to 256 blocks away. That's nice, it can call you back from the mines or something like that, but what if you want to go further? Well, luckily it is possible, but you're going to have to do a couple things. First of all, if you go further, the chunk's not going to be loaded. That's a major issue. So you're going to have some way to load the chunk that your stasis chamber's in. One way is by putting it in spawn. Spawn's generally always loaded, but check. I know on Realms, I don't believe that's the case, so make sure your spawn's loaded. Another way is force loading a chunk. You can do that with all sorts of mods and data packs, or you can do it with a simple command. So if you have the ability to put in commands on your world, you can do / force load, and then add, and then tittle space tittle. I believe that's what that's called. But it's the button that should be right under your escape button. And if you put that command in, press enter, it will mark that chunk for being a force loaded chunk, and it will always be active. If you need to, you can go back and change add to remove, and the chunk will no longer force load. And you probably want to make sure that your entire system is within the chunk. Easy way to do that is hold F3 and press G. You'll see it brings up this little bit of a cage around me. That shows the chunk that I'm in, and the machine is fully within it. So force loading the chunk, that's half of it. But if you remember what I said earlier, the linked controller only has a distance of 256 blocks. Well, that's by default. If you go into your save file for the world, you'll see a folder called server config, and inside of it there's a create config. And if you scroll way down towards the bottom, you'll find some lines talking about the linked controller, and you'll see that its default distance is 256 blocks. Well, you can go ahead and change that to whatever you want. And now you have a remote control that can call you back from anywhere by just using the create mod in vanilla Minecraft. Couple important bits of info. If you die, your ender pearl will disappear, so you'll have to reload your stasis chambers. But if you log in and out of a world, you don't need to worry about it. Your ender pearl will stay in the chamber. The only major limitation of teleportation, you can only teleport within whatever dimension you're in. If you're in the end, you can't teleport to the overworld. It's a shame, but hey, we're teleporting. Toolboxes, 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 toolboxes. We all love toolboxes. That's right. Do you love toolboxes as much as me? Probably not if you haven't seen my tutorial yet about it. But if you want to check it out, it's right there. So check it out. It's really good. But for now, I am going to get going. As always, everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something and have a good one. Later.